We have one more clip here from Jody Heiss. This guy's a Republican that just got through a primary for Congress in Georgia, and he's going to tell us his thoughts on guns. Buckle up.
In having the right to defend ourselves and to possess any weapon that we want to possess, be it a so-called assault weapon or not, it is my belief that any weapon that our government and law enforcement possesses ought to be allowed for individuals to possess in this country, provided they can afford it, obviously, but provided they have a clean record. You know, because right now we have the militarization of America. We have a government armed with bazookas compared to BB guns that we are allowed to have. And the Second Amendment is about us defending ourselves against potentially tyrannical government. You cannot defend yourself with a BB gun if your opponent has cannons and bazookas and missiles.
I don't need to say anything. He said it all right there. He laid out his thoughts perfectly for you. I think citizens should be able to have any, quote, any weapons that the government has. Wow. He even mentions bazookas and missiles by name. Well, look, the government has everything. So you want regular citizens to be able to have everything? Anything at all. Biological weapons, chemical weapons, Scud missiles, rocket launchers, tanks, F-35s, F-35-2s, aircraft carriers, submarines, nuclear weapons, Gatling guns, anti-aircraft missiles. I mean, how do you respond to that? He's letting you know he's fucking cool, Looney Tunes. Now, people were wondering, well, why did this guy, as he was running for office, why did he scrub the internet clean of his radio show? Well, that's why. Virtually every show is that fucking crazy. Right Wing Watch got their hands on a few clips and did showing the entire world. This guy got through a primary for Congress. They voted for him. Oh my God, this is so sad. When you have to explain to people that maybe people who are borderline crazy or severely depressed or who are murderers, imagine all the people who did mass shootings, which is a lot of them. We have them all the time in the U.S. Imagine that person had access to a nuke or had access to missiles or had access to an RPG. How much damage they could have done. It's unreal, man. It's unreal. And then, of course, it's obligatory for conservative Republicans to fuck up what the Second Amendment is actually for. Well, you know, it's to defend against the government if they get tyrannical, last line of defense against tyranny. As I've mentioned before on the show, that's totally made up. Totally made up. If you read the history of the Second Amendment, which you can do if you give a shit about this thing called, what is it again? I can't remember. Research, right? You learn very quickly. The Second Amendment was about standing armies, which means that when the soldiers are not fighting overseas and they come back home, the founders want them to disband. You can't stay together as the military here at home because that's a threat to overthrow the government. So it's not about giving us the opportunity to overthrow the government. It's about the opposite. They didn't want the government to get overthrown. So they mandate that the military disbands when they're here and then they could keep their guns. That's one reason. The other reason? To allow slave patrols in Virginia. See, Virginia didn't want to join the Union, so we needed to convince them to join the Union. So the founders said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Virginia was majority slave state, and they were afraid, well, the second we join the Union, they're just all going to escape north. All the slaves are going to escape north. So what the founding fathers said is, well, you're allowed to have militias, well-armed militias, and then they can patrol the northern border in Virginia to stop any slaves that escape north because they could be armed. So the idea was to protect slavery in Virginia. Those militias they're referring to are also slave patrols. And the idea that he's thrown out, you can't regulate guns at all. The word regulated is right in the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, etc., etc. So he's got no idea what he's talking about.